So let's talk about healing. When your body is out of whack, when something's just not right, what's the best way to handle it? Do we force it back into line, or do we kind of help it find its own way back to health? We're about to dive into two totally different ways of thinking about this, and honestly, it might just change how you see the human body.
All right, let's just get right to the heart of it. Picture this. A system in your body is stressed out. It's dysregulated. What do? Is the answer to jump in with an external fix and force a change? Or is it to work with the body, to help it heal itself from the inside out? This is the fundamental question we're going to unpack today.
And this question really boils down to two competing philosophies. On one hand, you've got the idea of imposing a fix from the outside to meet some kind of external goal, and on the other hand, you have a totally different approach, one that starts by addressing the body's own internal physical reality. It's this core battle between correction and coherence. Okay, let's dig into that first one.
First up, the approach you're probably most familiar with, the external imposed fix. Now, this is a model that basically treats the body like it's a machine, right? And when a part is broken, you just have to go in there and tweak it or replace it.
A really clear example of this comes from some pharmacological research on cortisol, the stress hormone, in men who've gone through trauma. The whole protocol is pretty straightforward. On day 1, they just measure the person's natural cortisol rhythm. On day 2, they give them a drug to inhibit, basically to block the stress system. Then on day 3, they flip it and use another drug to stimulate it. The whole point is to see if they can just manually hijack the controls.
And this one quote from the research, man, it just lays the whole philosophy bare. It says the goal is the decoupling of the biological mechanism from the psychological etiology. What that really means in plain English is that the entire experiment is designed to intentionally separate the symptom, that messed up cortisol level, from its actual root cause. You know, the traumatic thing that happened.
So in this way of thinking, the body's story, its history, it doesn't really matter for the treatment. The why just becomes secondary. The only thing that matters is correcting a biological problem in total isolation, as if that cortisol rhythm just exists in a vacuum, completely disconnected from the life that person has lived.
But what if there's another way? What if there's an approach that doesn't start with an outside goal, but instead starts with the body's own internal logic?
And to understand this other way, we've got to get our heads around this key idea, a corporeal fact. The word corporeal comes from the Latin word corpus, which just means body. So a corporeal fact is a physical, embodied reality. It's the idea that trauma isn't just a bad memory stuck in your head. It is a physical state that your body is holding onto right now.
And these facts aren't just abstract concepts. They have actual physical addresses in your body. Think about chronic stress that shows up as that very real physical tension you feel right above your eyes. Or go a little deeper to disruptions in a tiny but super important part of the brain called the supramammillary nucleus, or SUM, which we know is really sensitive to trauma. These aren't theories, they're physical facts.
So the alternative approach, which the source material calls prismatic cognition, is basically an internal system that helps the body understand itself and adapt. So instead of forcing a fix, the entire goal is to create the conditions for the system to find its own way back to balance.
Now this is where it gets a little wild. This whole system is grounded in a pretty unique mathematical idea called base 13 logic. So why base 13? Well, the source suggests that because 13 is a prime number, it can't be easily broken down. It provides a stable, indivisible anchor for this incredibly complex process of self-correction. It's not like base 12, which we see in clocks and calendars and can be divided up all sorts of ways. This is a solid foundation.
And the core principle, the engine behind this logic, is actually beautiful in its simplicity. I goes to I plus 1. That's it. It just means incremental, daily renewal. The source even has this poetic name for it, Gemini, day by day. It's not about one giant dramatic intervention. It's about a steady, step-by-step walk toward getting things back in order.
So you might be wondering, okay, but how does it know what the next step is? Well, believe it or not, it's a little bit like how an AI predicts the next word in a sentence. The system looks at its current state, its own internal context, and it figures out the most logical, most plausible next step to move back towards balance, all on its own without any external commands.
Okay, so we've got this idea of an internal logic, but what does an intervention based on that actually look like? This is where you can really see the two philosophies just side by side. Take a look at this headline from a neuroscience article. Now, forget about the CBD for a second. The single most important word on this slide is the verb calms. The research suggests CBD can calm neuroinflammation in Alzheimer's. And inflammation? Well, that's a perfect example of a corporeal fact. It's a tangible, physical reality of a body in distress.
And that right there is the night and day difference in what these two approaches are trying to do. The external fix we talked about earlier, it wants to stimulate or inhibit. It's a logic of force. But an intervention that works with the body's reality, it aims to calm or neutralize. It's a logic of providing the right conditions for the body to find its own balance.
And here's the key takeaway, the thing to really let sink in. Working with a physical reality like inflammation is a fundamentally different act than imposing an objective on some isolated mechanism. One approach actually addresses the tangible reality of the body's distress, while the other just forces a change and completely ignores the reason for that distress in the first place.
All right, so this all brings us to the final showdown, the big contrast between these two opposing philosophies, correction versus coherence.
Let's just put it all side by side so you can really see the difference. The correction way of thinking sees the body as a machine that needs fixing. Its method is external manipulation, and its goal is to just fix some abnormality. The coherence paradigm, on the other hand, sees the body as this complex system that's always trying to find balance. Its method is to help the body's own internal modeling, and its goal is to foster that natural ability to self-regulate from within.
And so we're going to end right where we started, but with a final thought for you to chew on. What is the future of healing? Are we going to keep treating it like an engineering problem, just focused on correcting broken parts? Or will we start to see it more like a gardening problem, focused on cultivating the right conditions for the entire system to flourish? You know, the choice between correction and coherence, it really could change everything.